Well, we're looking today at Unstuck and Upgraded. Now, a lot of us get stuck. We get stuck in some old programming. We get stuck into shadow beliefs. And what do I mean by shadow beliefs? Shadow beliefs of like, I'm invisible, no one pays attention to me, I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I don't know. You may have these shadow beliefs that affect your life. Maybe in unconscious ways, maybe in ways that you're not even aware of. But that programming can be shifted. Now, it's kind of like getting stuck in mud. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Kansas. And when I was 18 years old, I went to the Unstuck River. That doesn't mean probably anything to anybody here. But the Unstuck River is a river that feeds into what's called Lake Cheney, which is the reservoir for Wichita, Kansas, and the surrounding area. And so I decided on my own to take my 59 green and white Chevy. Remember the old Chevys with the big fins on the back? You know, when I start to get up to 55, I'd start to get a little bit of lift on the back end. I took my 59 Chevy by myself and no tent. I wanted to live off the land. I've been studying about herbs, been studying about plants. I was, had my mom's butcher knife with me, and I was just going to live off plants out there by the river. And so, no tent. I was sleeping by the side of the river. In Kansas, if you don't keep track, the weather can change quickly every day. You can wake up in a whole different season the next day. And so about 2 a.m, there was flashes of lightning that were so close, I could feel the heat from the lightning. I could feel it. I'd never been that close to lightning, really, and really red. It just really flashed. And I'm like, oh, this is not a safe position for me to be in. I am by a river, and rivers fill up, and rivers overflow and flood. And I'm out here with my 59 Chevy in the middle of nowhere, and then a deluge of rain. Rain so heavy that I could not breathe without breathing in water. It was just like a bucket continually being poured over my head, like being waterboarded. And so, I grabbed my stuff as fast as I could. It's all soaked. I grabbed my stuff, threw it in the back of my 59 Chevy, covered with sand, all soaked, jumped in the car, and I said a prayer. God, do not let me get stuck out here. Help me to get out of here. I believe, I affirm that I will not get stuck in the mud. Because have you ever been out in the country in the mud when it's pouring down rain? Oh, you can get stuck. And 59 Chevys, this is rear wheel drive, We're not talking about, anyway. So, I get in the car, I start it up, I'm praying. I grab that green steering wheel, and I begin to gradually step on the gas. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to dig a hole right off the bat. And I start to get moving. And the car starts to fishtail. You know what I mean by fishtail? That's when you have that back power, but not front power. And so it's fishtailing through the mud. And I just kept going. I wasn't going to slow down. I wasn't going to stop because I wanted to get out of the mud. I did not want to get stuck out there. So I just kept going, and I'm fishtailing, and I'm driving through the pasture. But I'm going to get out, and I'm affirming. And finally, I made it to a road, and man, I was just filled with gratitude. So I first want to talk about getting unstuck. Getting unstuck doesn't mean just doing one affirmation. Getting unstuck doesn't mean, oh, I just think I'll make a little change in my life. If you want to get unstuck, you need to put some effort into it, because there's a whole lot of inertia that wants to keep you right where you are. Sometimes the hell we know is at least the hell we know, and it's familiar, and people stay in it. I would work in the Women's Treatment Center, the only man who had ever been invited to be a staff member to work with the Women's Treatment Center in Wichita, Kansas. These were all women who had been abused. These are all women whose lives had been in danger. These are all women who had lost their self-esteem. They didn't know what their life was about. And I had the honor, the privilege to work with these courageous women. And some of them, it was hard. It was hard for them to get out of the situation they were in. They depended in some ways on it. They depended on, in some ways, even though it's skewed, on the safety, the security they had in that situation. At least it was something. So they first had to discover that there was a power within them that was greater than the power that they were seeing on the outside. They needed to discover there was something within them. I remember working with one of these women, and one of these women had been raised by her father, who was a minister. And every night, that minister, father, would come up to her room and sexually misuse her. Every night, she would pray to God that this would stop, but nothing changed. And at a certain point, as a teenager, she decided either there's no God or God doesn't care about me. In any case, she told God what God could do with himself. I then entered the picture when she's about 35, and I have permission to tell this story. And so here she is. She's in a group in a psych setting with a chaplain, me, someone representing God, someone who is a minister leading the group. Do you think that could be triggering? Maybe. I offered, okay, so write a letter to God. I gave this suggestion to the group. Write a letter to God and express your exact feelings. I mean, get them out. Don't censor it. Don't edit it. Get your feelings out. What you feel about God in that situation. Where was God in that situation? And she countered by saying, I don't believe in God. Well, how am I going to write a letter like that? I said, well, just write to whom it may concern. Write it to somebody. So she wrote it, and she came back to the next group, and she read her letter. She wanted to read her letter. May I share my letter with you? And this with the whole group. And we're like, oh, yeah. And so she really let God have it. Where were you? Do you get off on seeing this happen to little girls? Where were you? What kind of God are you? What kind of monster are you? Oh, she just let it out. And the group was very, very supportive. And then I said, okay, here's a follow-up assignment. Write a letter back to yourself from God. How would God respond? Now again, she said, well, I don't really believe in God. That's all right. Just imagine. If there were a God, how might God respond? She came back to the next group. She said, may I read my letter? And we're like all astounded. And yeah. And she read her letter. My precious, precious child. I was always there. I was crying in the room with you when this happened. I put you into the care and keeping of this person, this minister, your father, And he abused that privilege. That was not my will. But I want you to know I was always there. I know you don't feel that, but I want to ask you something. In those times where you've wanted to commit suicide, in those times when you felt like all the world was against you, in those times when you felt like there was no hope, something inside of you kept you going. Something inside of you gave you hope. Something inside of you gave you strength. That was me. I'm living inside of you. That is how you've kept going all this time. Can you imagine the group at this point? We're like, that made a radical change in that woman's life. Because she discovered there was a power within her that was greater than any of the circumstances. So she began to get unstuck, unentangled from the things that had tangled her up. When we want to get unstuck, we will have help. We will have the help from our beloved community, from a counselor, from a minister, from the presence of God. We will have help, but we need to mean business. Just like I meant business driving out of the mud. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to be a victim. I am going to get out of this. So the first thing is we need to be willing to get unstuck. Jesus in Matthew chapter 6 gives us a second principle that everything we need is provided for. Everything we need is here. Everything is already here. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus said, you know, you worry about what you're going to eat and what you're going to wear, but don't you see how God takes care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field? How much more will God take care of you? As Paul says in Romans chapter 8, if God be for us, who can be against us? As we say here, and we say it every Sunday morning, there's only one power and one presence. If we really believe there's only one power and one presence, that means there's no one and nothing against us. Say this with me. There's only one power and one presence. There is only one power and one presence. Now say this. That means no one and nothing is against me. That means no one and nothing is against me. That is a good affirmation and denial. Denial is there's no one and nothing against me. There's nothing working against me because there's only one power and one presence. But do we believe it? Do we believe it when it really comes down to it? Let me tell you about your minister. Okay, last Sunday I came up and I told you that we had been informed, and it was a surprise. It was out of the blue. We're great tenants. We take great care of property. We always pay on time and full. We're great tenants. We're good to neighbors. And we got informed. Oh, the owner's family is taking over where you live. You need to move. You have by October 16th to be out. They've sent us 7 notices. We're not idiots. They want to make sure we got the message. They sent a certified letter to make sure I signed for it. They sent an email asking for a response. I responded. I want to make sure they get out of there. All right. We get it. Now, I was having a little bit of a pity party, and I admit it. It's okay. Sometimes we have pity parties. Do you ever have a pity party? Now, some of you are going to say no. I know you don't. Some of you are so advanced, so evolved, you never have pity parties. Bless your hearts. I'm not quite there, but I'm doing a whole lot better than I used to, you know? I mean, there were years where I thought I was a victim. Now it might last a few days. But I thought, oh my goodness, God, really? Did you call us here for this? To be moving constantly and never have the place that we want to live in? We've been envisioning this place to live, and yet we've never had it. Is that what you've called us to? Is that what you want? If that's what you want, okay, I've heard your call. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But really, is that what you want for us, God? And then, I met with people and so forth, and like Dr. Gary Simmons, and what if this is something for you rather than against you? What if there's something good that's going to come out of this? What if, there's going to be some new options, and this can be an opportunity to involve the whole beloved community, and you all have responded magnificently. People have told me about places that are open. There's been support and help through all of this. I'm like, wow. And we need to do that for one another, not just for me. I mean, I've really seen the beloved community in action this week. So my wife, she's looking online. I'm looking online too, but she spots a place. And, she says, she keeps, I was going to say pester. That's not a good word. She keeps reminding, persevering. Can we go see this place? All right. So we go to see this place. And it has everything that's on my list. Spacious kitchen, spacious space, good spaces, surrounded with foliage and greenery and tall trees, mountains, hills, bike paths, walking paths, quiet, away from city life. Everything that's on our list. Now, initially I had been not looking in Mililani because I thought, that's kind of far, isn't it? But, we used to live in Kailua, and it'd take me 35 minutes to drive from Kailua to the church. And I timed us, and it took us 35 minutes from here to drive to Mililani, maybe an additional 3 to 5 minutes to get to the place because of construction. And I realized, God wasn't like, I told you so. God talks to me sometimes, okay? Now, don't get too worried about that. But God talks to me sometimes, and during this whole thing, when I was really down, because I got down, I got low, I got kind of depressed, kind of feeling sorry for myself, felt isolated. I'm out here in the middle of the Pacific, and I can't find where to live, and, And there was a time at which God said, do you trust me? And reminded me of Matthew chapter 6. Do you trust me to take care of you? Do you not know you're in my hands? I was like, yeah, I trust you. But I was just kind of forcing. So when all of this got revealed, I mean, God didn't like, I told you so or whatever. But I just realized that God takes care of us. If we're willing to get unstuck, which actually we were putting up with stuff that wasn't in our best interest, but, it was home. If we're willing to get unstuck, everything we need is provided. Do you believe that? Now, that's something for you to decide. You might say, well, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that. That's fine. You don't have to believe it, but I want to plant this seed. I want to plant this seed. I had chosen that reading that Cindy read from Alan Cohen, who lives in Maui. And that Jesus said, you have not because you ask not. May it be done according to your word. Do you believe? And the power of this month is order. Do you believe that you can establish order in your life? That you are not a victim? That you are not subject to the circumstances? That there is a power greater in you that is in the world? That comes from 1 John. There is a power greater in you than is in the world. Do you believe? Let it be done to you according to your belief. We are here to get unstuck and upgraded. We've had a major upgrade for less money. Are you willing to get unstuck from the old story? Are you willing to get unstuck from the old programming? Are you willing to get unstuck from the fear that holds you back? Are you willing to get unstuck from those false beliefs about yourself? And are you ready to move into an upgrade? Are you ready to move into your highest and best? Tony said to me this morning, I'd like for you to meet my father. I said, I already know him. He's very close to me. She said, is he? From what you were saying last Sunday, I wondered. I know him. You have a source of power within you that the world can never destroy, can never diminish, can never divide, can never dilute, can never destroy. You have a power within you like that woman that was in my group that could carry you through any circumstance and help you to get unstuck with whatever is holding you back. It's up to you. Amen. Let's take a deep breath just to center into that. We know, God, you are here. Wherever we are, you are. This presence, this power living in, through, and as us. And we know that we are yours as we go into the silence. We give thanks, God, for your presence, knowing we are here for your will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. We open ourselves to be this presence of you in this world, to bring forth our dreams, to do that which makes us come alive, and to know that we are coming forward with a power within us that is greater than any circumstance in the world. For this, God, we give thanks, and so it is. Amen.